In this video, we're going to start by just creating shapes and then adding values to those shapes to create the illusion of form in our drawing. Practicing basic forms are extremely crucial because these basic forms are what make up big complex objects. So if we take a line and close it up, we've created a 2D shape, and in this case we have a circle. And of course the form version of our shape here is a sphere. So my first basic shape is a circle, and the one thing you should do when you're drawing circles is to hover your hand over the paper while you're imitating the shape of the circle and then doing it. So as you slowly bring the pencil down to the surface, start drawing the shape. Once the circle is in place, we can refine its contours and then we'll start adding value. I'm just going to use an HB pencil initially to fill the area of form shadow, which is of course on the shape itself. I'll fill in almost the entire sphere with this HB pencil, except those areas for highlights. Then I'll go back with a softer graphite pencil. In this case, I'm using my 4B graphite pencil to darken the area of core shadow. I can go back and add another layer with the HB pencil again, smoothing out my shadows to have a more consistent layer. We'll add a cast shadow on the opposite side of the light source, which is of course hitting the object from top right, leaving that area on the bottom left side for the reflected highlight. And now we're done with our first form of the list. Next, let's go for the square and turn it into a cube. We'll start by simply drawing a square. Again, we'll start with the harder graphite pencil initially and then move on to the softer graphite pencil. Now I finished the 2D shape of the square and I just draw 3 lines coming out from each of the 3 corners towards the left to give it perspective. And then we'll just connect those ends to finish off the overall form of the cube. The light is consistent for each one of these shapes, and like the previous form, for this one the light is hitting on the object from top right. Again, with my HB pencil, I'll go back and start to work on the values. And I'll make it darker in each step. It's always better when you're working with graphite to make lighter layers of graphite and then introduce darker values to the drawing. So once we've done our job with the HB pencil on the surface, we'll go back with the softer graphite pencil. Here I'm using a 4B pencil again, and I start to push the values a bit darker. And we'll go back, darken up some of the values even more, pushing the range of value in this cube. So the top plane of the cube will be the area of highlight. The front-facing part of the cube will be the midtone, and then the area on the left side of the cube, which is on the opposite side of the light source, is the area of core shadow. And this is exactly where I'm going to drop a cast shadow right behind it. We'll slightly darken the edges right at the bottom to add an occlusion shadow right on the area that 2 forms meet. And our cube is perfectly completed. Next, let's go for drawing a pyramid form. Let's start by drawing the 2D shape of the pyramid, which is a triangle. And then we'll bring a diagonal line down from the top of the triangle to the left side, and then connect the end with the left bottom corner of the triangle. And now let's go for shading to turn it into a form. Again, we'll start with the HB pencil and slightly make the shape darker layer by layer. We'll introduce a darker value with a soft 4B graphite pencil, making the values quite a bit darker. We only see the midtone, which is the front plane of the pyramid, and the area of form shadow on the left side from here. The highlighted plane is not visible to us from this point of view. Next, let's go for adding the cast shadow. And this shadow should mimic the form of the pyramid, so it will be a triangular shape as well. Next, let's choose a cylinder to draw. We'll start by drawing an ellipse at the top and then two vertical lines down from each end of the ellipse. Make the bottom section curve as well. We'll start shading the form shadow from this part of the cylinder, and we'll get closer to the center, and as we move towards the light source, we'll get closer to the highlight zone. Again, after our job is done with the HB pencil, we'll take our 4B graphite pencil to darken some of the areas. Now, since the cylinder is rounded, we will have a bit of reflected highlight on the left edge of the shape. So that's why we should add gradation to our shadows to show the roundness of the cylinder, just like the way we did for the sphere. And it's different from shading the pyramid or the cube. So as I said, start from the darkest shadows and then feather your strokes out as you get closer to the light source to add midtones, and then leave this area on the right edge for the highlight. Again, let's add the cast shadow in the last step and drop a shape which kind of mimic the form of a cylinder, and add an occlusion shadow right underneath the object where the two forms meet. So now we transformed a 2D shape into a 3D cylinder shape. For the next form, I like to add a cone to the list. We'll start this in a similar way we did for the pyramid, but this time we'll add a rounded bottom. Now, just as we saw with the cylinder, there will be a gradation of value. So to add this gradation and show the roundness of the cone, we'll start with the darkest areas, and as we move forward, we'll feather out the strokes to make them lighter as we get closer to the highlights. So there will be a smooth transition from the area of core shadow to midtone to finally the highlighted zone. Let's leave an area of reflected light on the left side of the object, since it really helps to give the illusion of roundness to the form. And again, we'll add an area of cast shadow right behind the cone, and of course it should follow the same form as what we drew. Add darker values with your 4B pencil and do it in several layers, and try not to rush with shading. And again, we can go back with the HB pencil and smooth out some of the texture that's left by the softer graphite. And finally, for the last form, we're gonna draw a rectangle. Of course, the process of drawing this one is really not that different from the square. So it'll make it easier for us to transform it into a form. Again, after finishing the 2D shape, we'll directly jump onto the shading stage. And again, we'll start with the harder pencil, in this case an HB pencil. And after that, again, we'll introduce darker values to the drawing with 4B graphite pencil, extending the value range and making the contrast a bit stronger. It's always easier to make an area darker if you need, instead of making it lighter with eraser if you accidentally make it too dark. Remember, shading this shape is not like the sphere, cylinder, or the cone, and each plane get a consistent layer of graphite. It really helps us to show the flat surface of each plane on the rectangle. After understanding the basic light and form of all the basic shapes, you will be able to understand the more complex objects and figures that we have when we shade. Don't forget to drop a cast shadow underneath and darken the area of occlusion shadow, which really needs the darkest value you can get from your pencil. And we're done with this one as well. I hope you guys tried these exercises out and feel free to tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see what you guys create. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more tips and tutorials. And I'll see you soon in the next one.